Welcome to Anibros episode 150. Today the cousins finally watched Anno's magnum opus, Evangelion 3.0 plus 1.0. This is a long one, so brew a fresh pot of LCL because 2.5 hours of Eva discussion is coming up next.
Do it.
Well, welcome to Anibros. Once again, we're the cousins. You can go to our website at www.anibroscreative.com and also see our specifically just our podcast at www.anibrospodcast.com. As usual, I'm Laven. You can find me on Twitter at LavenVoth.
Hey, and I'm Kenny. You can find me at Sakoku_otaku on Twitter.
Yes. And today is a big day because...
it's the biggest.
It's the biggest day. Because contrary to yours and mine and everybody's expectations, Eva came out everywhere in the world at the same time with subtitles. Shockingly in the same, 6 month span.
5 months.
Yeah, 5 month span.
Yeah, within essentially, the real time frame 5 months, but it came out within half a year of the actual Japan release, which is amazing.
Is this unprecedented?
I don't think it's necessarily unprecedented because we've had some pretty close simultaneous releases between My Hero Academia movies in between Japan and the United States. Were they in the actual theater and then they came out within 5 months? Yeah. I'd have to double check, but yeah, we the two My Hero Academia movies got theatrical releases in the States. Sure. COVID really messed a lot of stuff up because I think we would have also gotten Demon Slayer Mugen Train pretty close to when it came out in Japan, were it not for the pandemic.
Well, okay. So I don't follow any of those subpart animations. But are you saying, though, that those came out in theaters in America after their theatrical release in Japan?
Yeah.
So then my question about it being unprecedented is it was in theaters here and then it became available in your home cinema on home video and DVD, rentable at your local Blockbuster right now.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. What? You don't have to go to a theater in America to see it. You can just get it in your house.
Yeah, that's a really good point. That might be the completely unique thing here. Which is pretty flippin' awesome.
It's pretty wild. I never predicted this. I never thought this would happen.
Yeah.
So I'm really glad that instead of getting to do this episode 2 years from now, we can do it now.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, because we are here to talk about, once again, Evangelion 3.0 plus 1.0, Thrice Upon a Time.
Yeah, exactly.
That title.
I know that our episodes are released at a breakneck pace. So you might just be hot off the heels of listening to our last Evangelion episode. But don't worry. I think it's content worth listening to. Probably.
It's really our wheelhouse. If we're going to be able to produce a quality episode, it's going to be about this.
That's true. Between Gundam and Eva, everyone has been alienated and has unsubscribed from this podcast already. Because the
stronger main.
The fan base of Moe fans that we cultivated in the beginning This is the last straw, I'm sure.
I'm sick of this. There's Moe in the last Evangelion movie.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. Awesome. So that's the Tantalizer. We are going to talk about this amazing, maybe the one good thing Amazon has ever done. And, you know, we'll give you another warning later on in the episode, but I just want to get this out for our listeners right now. There will be no restrictions on what we are going to talk about related to Evangelion once we start in on it. That means that we are going to talk without with like no boundaries on the original series, the original movies, Death and Rebirth, and the end of Evangelion, and all 4 Rebuild movies. Yeah. We'll probably also talk about the manga. I don't know, the Shinji Ikari Raising Project, Girlfriend of Steel. I don't know. We'll talk about everything. So if you are, you know, persnickety about spoilers or really don't want to have any aspect of Evangelion potentially spoiled for you, this episode isn't it. Go watch all 26 episodes, watch all 6 movies, read all 12 volumes, come back and give this a listen.
Yeah, you really have no excuse. I don't feel bad for anyone who's like, I don't want to hear spoilers. Like, why did you click on this podcast in that case? And second of all, it's available to you freely right now on the interwebs. So go get it. Go watch it. And if you don't care about Eva, I don't care about you. How about that?
Hot damn.
That's my hot,
coming in hot.
That's my hot take.
Okay, but before we dive into that, have you been watching anything else?
Yeah, I did. I watched several things.
Nice.
I just decided on a whim to watch Golden Kamuy.
Oh, yeah.
And I watched all of it, minus the OVAs. There's apparently like an OVA series that's kind of reasonably sized that takes place in between 1 or 2 of the seasons. I didn't watch those, but I watched all the normal TV anime episodes.
Nice.
It's pretty good. I would give it a strong recommend if you like adventure, but not stupid adventure like One Piece. It's going to be like a fun, like adult oriented adventure without wacky powers. It's pretty good. And you get to learn about like Ainu culture, which I didn't really know anything about. And it's fun to get like little interesting interesting pieces of information, I guess.
Yeah. The Ainu being the indigenous people of northern Japan.
Right. I didn't want to say nuggets of information because I thought that would be too stupid of a pun to make.
Gotcha.
But yeah.
Yeah, I've seen probably the first 6 episodes, and for whatever reason, I just didn't follow through. I really enjoyed what I've seen, and yeah, animation's pretty solid. Story's great. It's a very popular manga as well.
Yeah, I believe the manga is still ongoing. So the part I got to in the anime, which is all of it's aired so far, is just like it just kind of ends, and so you're waiting for the next part to be animated, like the next season. But yeah, it's really good. If you like historical adventure, it's like takes place in late Meiji era, but it like right after the Russo-Japanese War, but it doesn't like that sounds like something that history people would only history people would be interested in. But really it doesn't matter. It's just really good, and the story is time irrelevant. It's just like a good goal. He's trying to find this treasure that was well, it's really complicated, but there's a treasure involved, and he wants to find it. And there's these group of prisoners in the prison who are tattooed with a map to the treasure by a single prisoner who knew the location of the treasure. So he like tattooed the prisoners with a map, and you have to go find all the prisoners and somehow get their skin, or like allow them to have the map be copied down, because you need all the prisoners as like every single one of them, you need all their tattoos to like complete the map and understand where the treasure is.
Yeah, put it together. That's it's the worst version of the Dragon Balls, but it still makes for a compelling show.
Yeah, so like these factions like, you know, evolve, and like people start working together and then backstabbing each other to like figure out how to like use the treasure. And some people have good motives, some people have like weird motives. It's very interesting and good, and I highly recommend it. And I probably don't need to recommend it because as I believe it's a very popular show already.
Super popular.
So I think everyone's already watched it, and I'm just late to the party. But I definitely recommend it if you haven't watched it. It's like an under the radar cool show. Like it seems like a popular show that's not like, you know, if you're a hipster about these things like I am, it's like if you don't want to watch Demon Slayer, you can watch this, and there's like actually a community of people you can talk about it with.
Yeah, it's roughly kind of roughly the same time period, those two shows. That's kind of interesting. Yeah, and I think that, you know, just to the pace that anime comes out in, I mean, I feel like I blinked and I'm probably a season and a half behind, because the newest show I've seen is Odd Taxi, and I'm pretty sure that was a season ago at this point. So maybe folks missed it because it aired, I don't know, I think it started like a year or two ago, which is, you know, maybe 8 seasons ago, depending on when it came out.
Yeah, I want to say like 2017, 2018 is when the first one came out. So
yeah, it looks, 2018. Wow.
But the newest season just aired this year, or no, 2020, last year, or maybe this winter. I don't remember, but like pretty not so long ago. The most recent season came out, so it's like it's current-ish.
Yeah. The thing I really remember is while it's a very serious show, the humor is kind of A+. Like it's a very funny show when it wants to be.
It's so bizarre. Like that's my favorite part about the show is it's kind of surrealist. Like there'll be these like really heavy, like kind of like thought-provoking parts where you're like, wow, this is really good. And then there'll be this like off-the-wall abstract comedy thrown in, and you're just like, what? Like really dark black humor. You're like, okay, guess this is fine. but blended together and just like makes it really like, I don't know, just really off the wall, like avant-garde kind of style.
Yeah,
which I enjoy. I think it's bizarre, but it's cool.
Nice.
Yeah.
So, anything else?
So I watched that. I rewatched The Wind Rises because as we'll talk about later, there's a NHK documentary about Anno, and it reminded me that Anno does the voice acting for the lead character in The Wind Rises, like the main character. And so I was like, oh, I kind of want to watch The Wind Rises because I hadn't seen it since it was in the theater. So I rewatched that, and it's really funny because I watched it with Kaori, and as soon as the main character starts speaking, we're like, that's Anno. This is going to be really hard to like take him seriously as a character because it's just Anno's voice.
Right. And it's kind of a long way that he's come from voicing the cat in Fooly Cooly.
That's right.
Yeah. So, and, you know, Laven's talking about Studio Ghibli's The Wind Rises. Is it a fictional telling of an aircraft designer, or is it an actual biography of the guy who invented the Zero?
Well, it's kind of both. It's a fictionalized biography of the real man.
Gotcha.
So, like, there are real people, like actual historical figures as characters in this show, but it's kind of like they take a lot of liberties with like events and like what happened. But it's based on a real book that is a real biography. So,
okay.
It's kind of both. Like, there's a lot of just like imaginary stuff that goes on, and there's the whole plot point with the romance is like unconfirmed if it actually happened to him or not. I don't think it did. So that part I think is just purely fictionalized, but for the most part, it's still like worth watching. Like, it's really good.
Yeah,
the animation is really good, and the anti-war message is really strong. And I don't know, Zero's cool, but the Zero doesn't get a little bit of a spoiler, but the titular cool plane that I wanted to see is shown for like approximately 4 seconds at the very end, and the whole thing is like him designing the precursor aircraft, and then like it kind of just has like an epilogue at the end where it's just like, oh yeah, and also you make the Zero eventually, and Japan loses the war. That sucks, and that's the end.
Those two connections.
Yeah.
That's really funny, and you know, the main character voiced by the director of Evangelion, Hideaki Anno.
Right.
For those not yet versed in the shorthand that we'll be throwing around here very soon.
I feel like mentioning the word Anno is not shorthand. It's just like, if you don't understand what we're talking about, the rest of the episode is going to make zero sense.
That's why we got to give them context at the beginning.
Yeah, this is
and then tell them to leave.
The shorthand, aka a man's name that you should learn.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I also I've been watching Ace of Diamond. Or Diamond.
Baseball anime?
Yeah. Just because like I need something to fall asleep, and that's what I chose.
It's the next series placed upon the altar.
But then I keep pausing it and like checking out other things to watch when I'm falling asleep, and then I found a better show that I am super like kind of annoyed that I didn't give this a chance before a long time ago, because it's kind of older at this point. But Mushishi, do you know?
Oh, totally.
I never watched this or cared about it or like thought it was interesting sounding before. Even though everyone says it's great, I just didn't believe them or didn't care. You know, I don't know. For some reason, it just flew under the radar for me.
Yeah.
And so I looked up a list of best anime to fall asleep to. And it was number one. And I was like, okay, let's give this a try. But then I had trouble falling asleep to it. Not because it's not...
Oh, you got hooked?
Not because it's not peaceful and good to fall asleep. Like, I can understand why people say this. But it's so interesting. Like, the story is so interesting.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, well, then what happens? I don't want to sleep yet because I want to know what's going on.
Yeah, and... You know, it's so funny that you mentioned that it's on a list of anime to fall asleep to. I have absolutely turned on episodes of Mushishi to fall asleep when I was traveling for work. Like, if I was having difficulty falling asleep in the, like, super dry, unfamiliar hotel room, I'd be like, oh, okay, what anime do I have access to right now? And yeah, like, I've probably tried to watch... I've seen all of Mushishi, but in the attempt to fall asleep to it, I've probably seen like the first and second episode maybe like, I don't know, 5 times.
Yeah. There's a couple that I've watched like 3 or 4 times already.
Yeah.
But it's really good, and I'm sure everyone knows this already. But you should watch it if you haven't. It's really good. I mean, if you don't know what it is, it's like, I don't know how to explain it. It's like he's like a doctor basically, but instead of curing like real diseases that we know of in our world, he cures like these supernatural phenomena that occur because of these things called mushi, which is not bugs, even though they're kind of like bugs. They're it's
a different kanji, right?
Well, I don't know. Because it's a spoken word for most of the show. But they're like, I don't know. They're described as like the tiniest life form, smaller than anything else that like exists on a plane that we cannot perceive. But they can like form together and create like, I don't know, not anti-life, but like, I don't know, like inverse of living things in like a dimensional plane that we cannot perceive. But some people can see them. So they cause this like invisible phenomena that like seems supernatural, but like is explained by this weird thing called mushi. And they like, they just form these like alternative creatures that aren't able to be seen by normal people. Like, for example, there's like this earworm that gets into people's ears and like eats sound. So people just start going deaf in this village, seemingly with no explanation. But like he just shows up and he's like, oh yeah, it's this thing. They like eat the sound and get in people's ears. So he like cures people of these like weird ailments that are, they spring up. They're really interesting. It's just like creative stories, like one-off story. Each episode is a one-off story with this like creative like plot point that I like. Yeah,
it's all tied together in like a Japanese locale, but to me, Mushishi always felt like Kino's Journey, where it's like each episode is its own kind of outside the box, odd little story.
Yeah. I didn't think of that before now. Yeah, it reminds me of that. It's really peaceful and calm. There's really no crazy conflict. It's just like having someone tell you a low-key horror story that has like a melancholy ending. It's just like, okay, it's not happy or sad. It's just like, that was interesting. And then he like travels on to something else, but he keeps encountering like these weird phenomena that happen like to people, and he like wants to investigate them and figure it out. I love it, and I think there's a new, like another season that came out, I guess. Kind of recently.
I remember hearing about that.
So I'm looking forward to watching all of this. It made me think I need to rewatch Lane. That's the first thing I thought when I was watching this. I was like, you know what, this tone reminds me of Lane, and I want to rewatch Lane now.
You know, we had made plans to do a retro on Lane, and so I watched it, I don't know, probably like a year ago now at this point.
Yeah.
If you do pull the trigger on that, let me know. I will rewatch Lane again, because boy, do I have thoughts as an adult watching it.
Yeah, I haven't watched it since I was like a middle schooler, so I want to watch it again and be like, what's... I'm sure it's going to be even weirder than I thought even before.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what I've been watching.
Nice.
Have you watched anything besides the old Evangelion?
Nope. But I've watched Eva twice. I've consumed, 4 hours of Anno documentaries. It's been rather all-consuming since the movie came out last week.
Wow, that was last week, only last week?
I guess it was 12 days ago at the time of this recording. So about 2 weeks ago. I've seen it twice and done a lot.
Well, I guess then it's time to dig into the main event.
Oh, yeah.
And so, I guess we should warn people about the spoilers. This is the welcome to the No Filter, sponsored by Lucky Strike section of the podcast.
Yeah. This is our door of guff. If you go past this point, you're in for it.
Your humanity leaves you and you become shootable.
Yeah. Yeah. Welcome to our anti-universe. This is where we're gonna just dig in. Man. Yeah. So we're gonna talk about, and I guess we'll use the English release title or the Western release title, Evangelion 3.0 plus 1.0, Thrice Upon a Time, or Shin Evangelion. Hot damn. I don't even know. I don't know which face to climb this mountain from first. We did a lot a lot of preamble about the Rebuild series in our last Evangelion episode. So if people want more detail on that, they should probably go there. I don't want to rehash it too much. But
yeah, this is kind of a continuation. Just now that you've seen it, like kind of just rehash.
Exactly.
Not rehash, but like just go off of like, what did we get wrong before?
Well,
what do we think about it now?
Well, you did an amazing job keeping a lot under your hat. You had every opportunity to spoil this movie, and you did not.
I couldn't. I didn't. I felt that would be a betrayal, and I didn't want to be a betrayer. So,
I appreciate that. And, like, the nice thing is, we got to watch it together.
Mm-hmm.
We both had access to it on Amazon. I was on Amazon.com. You're on Amazon.co.jp. And we just hit play at the same time. We watched it also with friend of the show and resident poltergeist Jack.
As well as a friend of the show, Liquid Ken.
Yeah, Liquid Ken was there. Boy.
Yeah, I felt this is I know now how the boss felt back to your just slightly previous point about keeping things under my hat. I thought originally that this movie was going to take like 3 years to come out in America. Mm-hmm. So I now know how the boss felt, having to like know the truth and keep the truth secret and go into this just being like, well, I can't reveal how cool it was to Kenny until a long time from now. So I'll just have to just bear down and just like not talk about this cool movie with anybody until it comes out.
And I'm like super appreciative, and I did a really good job. So it was released on Friday the 13th. On Amazon. I was traveling that Friday and I couldn't watch it until Saturday. And so I was impressed just by the general, I guess the anime community respecting the gravity of this film. And it took me like a good week or two to see people start to like dissect it on Twitter and whatnot. So I just want to say, a heartfelt congratulations to all of us for not fucking it up and not ruining it for anyone. This is your third warning that at this point, if you have not seen this movie, we're gonna ruin everything because like there's too much here to talk about that we can't censor ourselves.
Yeah. The good thing, though, is about this kind of movie is that even if you don't care about spoilers and we ruin everything, I still think you'll gain something by watching it. Mm-hmm. Even if you know what's going to happen. Like, it's obviously not going to be as good, which is why I didn't tell you all the things. But you'll still need to watch it because it's not something we can just be like, well, this is a summary of the plot. And now you don't need to watch it. It doesn't work like that. It's physically impossible to like accurately depict it with words because it cannot be done. Like you need to like view what's going on.
Yeah. And to that point, let me try my best to summarize the plot of this movie because that'll give us a way in.
Okay, go ahead. Please do so.
And actually, I think this movie is extremely straightforward to follow.
Yeah.
And it's a direct continuation of 3.0. It starts right where 3.0 ends. So you have Shinji, Rei, and Asuka. They're Asuka's Eva Unit 2 has been destroyed. Rei didn't have an Eva, and Shinji's Eva is used as the power source to power the AAA Wunder. So they're on foot. They're walking through what looks like some desolate red wasteland. They get rescued by easily one of the best reveals ever. Kensuke Ida pulls up in his Jeep, steps out in a hazmat suit, and rescues our three main characters. And he takes them to Village 3. Probably the most beautiful, like, post-apocalyptic rebirth of Tokyo 3 that you could imagine. And then
Yeah.
I think at that point Shinji is kind of like passed out when Kensuke rescues them, and so he wakes up and he's greeted by a doctor who turns out to be Toji Suzuhara, another one of his school friends. Notably, in the Rebuild series, Toji is not the pilot of Unit 4, which is very important because were he the pilot, he might be dead. Although Asuka was piloting Unit 4 in the Rebuild series, and she's not dead. Or maybe. And so what we get is, the Villa, the protagonist organization that is fighting Nerve and trying to prevent near third impact. They're off getting new parts for the EVA, or for the EVA units, which is actually how the movie starts, with a pretty awesome battle scene in Paris. And while they're doing that, and while they're coming back, they just let the pilots kind of chill in Village 3. And Shinji is basically catatonic. He's extremely depressed, having failed at his one attempt to being assertive and accidentally triggering near third impact. And then you have, so he's like kind of beaten down. Rei, who has been revealed to not be the Rei Ayanami that Shinji thought he was saving, gets adopted by the village and put to work. And she kind of has this innocent approach, trying to learn what's going on.
What's going on, aka like how to life, how to life, like what is everything.
Because Rei's big thing is always that she does whatever order she's given, because Rei is really just a series of clones based on Yui Ikari, Shinji's mother. And so this Rei is just a pilot for one of the what are called Vessels of Adam, which is a Nerve EVA unit. And so, but this Rei, has a certain affinity for Shinji, and therefore wants to kind of figure out who Rei Ayanami is. And I think that's one of the most kind of like endearing aspects of this movie, because I complain a lot about I do like the Godfather thing. Look what they did to my Rei in 3.0, because that Rei is like kind of the most flat and worse version of Rei, which is saying something, because I will admit that often Rei has no personality.
Often.
By design. But this movie really, I feel like, redeems the Rei character a lot from the rebuild, by letting her kind of learn about different, saying good morning, how are you, hello, goodbye, thank you, interacting, learning how to read, learning how to plant rice, helping in the village. Initially the pilots, initially Rei and Shinji are taken to Toji's house, where it's revealed that Toji has married the class rep Hikari, original name Hikari Hiroki, but I guess in this movie she's Hikari Suzuhara. They have a kid, they have a brand new baby. Her father is there, which, quick aside, we so rarely see actual parents in Evangelion. that on my second rewatch, one of my notes that I wrote down while watching it, I was like, there's an actual parent present. And at one point he scolds Shinji because Shinji's just being like refusing to eat and totally in his own head.
Well, what do you mean by present?
Well,
because I mean technically,
he's there.
Technically, Hikari Gendo is present.
He is, but like I mean, like
I know what you mean. I'm just
so. Hikari's father is an actual character who offers parental correction to one of the main cast. Like,
well,
you know, Misato is kind of like a pseudo mother to Shinji. Kaji is kind of like a pseudo father, but they tend to be more like buddy in their interactions. Like, Kaji never like directly tells Shinji to like get his shit together. So it was just really interesting to see.
Yes, I agree.
So, you know, after Hikari's dad yells at Shinji, Kensuke shows up and he has a bottle of sake that he's been brewing. So they all drink and have a good time. And then Kensuke, in a beautiful echoing of his help that he provides Shinji when they're kids and hides Shinji out in his like camp, he takes Shinji back to his house, his self-made house, where we discover that Asuka also likes to hang out there, suggesting maybe Kensuke and Asuka are a thing in the Rebuild series.
Yeah.
You know, Go ahead.
Nothing.
So, you know, Rei's off doing, you know, village stuff, planting rice, learning how to use a bath, whatnot. Shinji spends a few days not eating, just being really catatonic. Extremely similar to how he is at the beginning of the end of Evangelion, where he's just kind of useless. And you know, Asuka gets really pissed at him at one point and like tries to force feed him.
A tale as old as time.
Somewhat yeah. You know, Asuka just gets pissed off that he's being so weak, and so she lashes out. But that makes Shinji, he gets pissed off, and so he leaves Kensuke's place and ends up walking to the ruins of the old Nerve headquarters, where he starts to hang out, and where we get a little nice cameo. Pen at some point spawned additional generation of warm water penguins. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that a penguin can't live for 14 years, so I'm just going to say Pen might be dead. But his progeny live on.
Yeah, I don't know how long penguins can live, but probably you're right. But also, as a quick aside that's like really irrelevant, I went to a bird only zoo, like a bird place, like
an aviary.
I guess it's an aviary, but it's like a zoo. They call it a bird park.
Yeah.
Anyway, I went there,
okay.
and it was very warm inside. There's like an area where it's warm, and they had a penguin exhibit in the warm area, and there's just like little penguins running around, and you can like look at them and stuff.
That's cool.
And I was like, huh, I guess there are penguins that don't need to be in the cold.
Yeah, I think there are. I feel like there is an animated 3D animated movie about penguins that surf. I could be wrong.
There's definitely one about penguins that dance called Happy Feet.
I feel like Guillermo del Toro produced Happy Feet.
Is that a real?
I don't want to make that claim.
I really hope that's true.
Is the
some sinister undertones that I didn't realize were going on in Happy Feet.
So yeah, Shinji he wanders off, and while he's just kind of mentally processing everything, Rei starts to make overtures trying to get him to engage. And Kensuke does the same thing. They're trying to illustrate to Shinji that, you know, while, that near third impact was pretty devastating and has caused a lot of hardship, life goes on. There was pain, but things move forward. And little by little, he gets this. Kensuke takes him out with him on his work. Kensuke is kind of like a go-between between this organization called Credit, which is a branch of Villa that does humanitarian efforts. I think really a necessary type of distinction, but it is a bit of kind of realistic things on how like an NPO would operate, or an NGO would operate. So in this, Kensuke takes Shinji to meet what I think is one of the really interesting twists and reveals in the story. Takes him to meet Ryoji Kaji, who is the son of Kaji and Misato.
Totally healthy naming choice, I thought.
Well, I mean, I don't even know if he knows who his parents are, because Misato stays away from him and Kaji is dead. So he might just not even know that he has his father's name.
I mean, do you think that no one's told him or like explained to him his life?
I honestly don't know.
It's like a small ring of people. Like I feel like you'd find out.
Yeah,
he's actually going to be the
the
protagonist for Evangelion 2 after he figures out everything that happened.
Yeah, Eva 2, Eva more harder. Yeah. So, a big thing that I skipped over. So there's like this red plague that's covering the planet.
I skipped this giant point about.
I skipped a really important part, so I'll go back.
The whole Earth is dead. It's a dead Earth.
Yeah, the whole Earth is dead. And what Villa is doing is they have discovered a technology that can kind of purify and reclaim sections of the Earth. And so the movie opens with this big action set piece in Paris where they're restoring the French branch of Nerve so they can get equipment from it. And it's these big black pylons that glow red. And so they're surrounding Village 3 and keeping out whatever this corruption or
what do they call it?
Red plague is.
They call it there's some specific name for it. It's like the hold on. It's called like
coralization.
Coralization.
So,
yes.
But not like coral like the sea, core like in the core of an angel or an Eva.
They kind of coralize. So they crystallize, but not crystal. Coralize.
Coralize, yes. Which is important and it'll make sense later. So Villa is enacting missions to prevent this from happening, or at least safeguard certain communities. And so that's why Village 3 is safe. Mm-hmm. Shinji starts to get his act together. He's fishing. That usually calms somebody down.
Something that I wanted to just sorry, quickly.
Go. No. Yeah.
Now they call it Village 3. Do we know if it's the third village or if it's just like named that way because it's right next to Tokyo 3?
I think the naming is like a nod to Tokyo 3, but they suggest that there is trade between other villages.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, okay.
So I think they are just designated as Village 3.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Okay.
And kind of funny, I'll plant this flag and we'll come back to it later. There are a lot of interesting similarities between the final Evangelion movie and Death Stranding.
Yeah, that's true.
And Credit and these villages being one of them. So Rei is discovering her personality, and at one point she asks Shinji for a name because everybody in the village in 3.0, Shinji tells this Rei that she is not Rei Ayanami. And so when she's asked for her name, she says, I don't really have one. And so the villagers start calling her Miss Lookalike. And because they all, Toji and Hikari give her that name because they know the original Rei Ayanami, or at least they know an original Rei Ayanami. And so Rei asks Shinji, hey, can you give me a name? I'd like you to name me. And Rei realizes that she's running out of energy. Her suit starts beeping at her, and she kind of like passes out late at night. And so she comes to Shinji to return his Gendo's media player, his like cassette player, and see if Shinji has a name picked out. And Shinji says, I don't have a name picked out. You really are Rei Ayanami. And then the movie delivers its real first like gut punch, because Rei starts backing away from Shinji and, acknowledges that, there's a lot of stuff that she wishes she could have done with her life. And then she pops like a balloon into LCL. Because apparently Rei clones, unless they're maintained at Nerve headquarters, they have a pretty short shelf life.
Now, we don't yes, but this could also be true for the other Rei, like even in the original series. Like, I mean, it doesn't ever say that, or is not implied or anything. But even the original Rei, like in the TV series, was sometimes like in the LCL tube, like getting some maintenance by Gendo.
Yeah, absolutely.
So like, I don't know, seems very logical and plausible that this was like something that happened all along.
Yeah, I think so. I think that unless she goes into those floating pools to chill out and get oddly ogled by Gendo, they need some type of restoration because their flesh is kind of weak. And you see, in the original series, when does Misato destroy the all the Reis? Because Kaji shows her, or is it Ritsuko?
I thought it was Ritsuko.
It's Ritsuko. So Ritsuko destroys all the Reis, and she just probably messes with like the pH of the tank or something. Yeah,
and they all dissolve
and they all disintegrate. Yeah. So at this point, Villa is ready to receive some information from the village and prepare for their final assault on Nerve, because Nerve is starting to make moves too. Asuka and Shinji makes a determination that he wants to go with Villa, and he goes on board with Asuka.
He goes on board with Asuka. You skip over the part.
Well, Asuka's like, okay, here's how this is going to work. And she just tases him. So Shinji does a lot of passing out and waking up in strange places, which is his MO. Yeah. He gets taken back on board the Wonder. He gets put under detention. They instead of putting another DS choker on him, they just put him in a cell that's lined with explosives because they think that's better. He's confronted by Sakura Suzuhara, who in 3.0 tells him, don't pilot an Eva, which he clearly does, and she is pissed.
Well, everyone doesn't want him to do that. Yeah. Like everybody. Yeah. Like, there's not one person who wants him to pilot the Eva. Like, they're like, hey, dude, last time you did that is really bad for all of us because of your like emotional immaturity. So don't do that again. Especially after you were just like spent half the anime being catatonic and pissy for no reason. Well, not no reason, but yeah.
So he goes on board, and then Mari is reunited with Asuka. They apparently share a very similar explosive cell, although Mari has spent her time as Villa travels the world trying to resurrect areas. She's been collecting books, and so their like shared quarters is literally like 70% full of books, and they just live in a very tiny square. They get ready to go to combat, and Gendo is starting to make moves, and he there's this thing called the Black Moon, which appears at the end of 3.0, and they start rising it up and they start transporting the Nerve headquarters to a certain spot. Basically, they're all going to Antarctica, where Second Impact happened. So, on the Wonder, Misato and Ritsuko have a conversation where it's revealed that Kaji sacrificed himself to stop the Third Impact at the end of Evangelion 2.0. And he was also the one who, and this is a plot point in 3.0, but Kaji stole the Wonder from Nerve. It's a ship that Nerve designed for the Human Instrumentality Project. And Misato and Ritsuko have a conversation about Kaji's real ambition. Not that he cared about human life, but that he cared about the biodiversity on Earth. And so what Wonder actually is like an ark for samples of all the various vegetation, plants, flora on the Earth. So it's full of seeds, which they promptly launch into space. As like they're gonna take the ship into battle, so they send off into space the seeds of life from Earth, so that if they fail, that Kaji's mission will at least carry on.
Yeah, good luck for those seeds to propagate on a red dead Earth. Don't think that'll happen.
Don't worry about it. It's the thought that counts. Or maybe someone super in the future will find them and do something with them.
Isn't that how we got in this mess in the first place? Sending seeds out into the abyss?
This is what starts Evangelion doesn't actually take place in a time loop. It just takes place in different Earth-like planets where the seeds, how they different grow. All angels are actually watermelon seeds. So I think this is... something you pointed out, which is really cool, is as Nerve and Villa go to battle, it starts with a naval battle, like almost straight out of Spaceship Yamato.
Well, yeah, they use this battle. It's like a complete deliberate homage to Yamato.
Yeah,
like the music, which the score is like pretty contemporary for the whole show, except for this one battle where it's totally 70s disco inspired, like Yamato or like original Mobile Suit Gundam-esque, like totally like groovy disco, like like space battle music, and they just start having a classic space battle. And I'm like, oh, this is awesome.
And so the Wonder goes head to head with a sister ship designed in the same way, but with a little bit more firepower.
Yeah.
Fortunately, though, the Wonder has a superior crew, even though Fuyutsuki is kind of in charge of the other ships.
The other ship doesn't have a crew at all. They just have Fuyutsuki standing there in like on a platform.
It's all dummy plug system. Yeah. It's all a bunch of rays, honestly.
Probably, yeah.
And unlike in End of Evangelion, where the dummy plugs are based on Kaoru's personality, in Rebuild, it's all rays. And so you have this Navy battle. The Wonder is equipped with a bunch of rocket-propelled battle cruisers as missiles. Uh-huh. So at one point, the Wonder actually is going up against two sister ships. And, they kind of crest around the Black Moon, get a lock on Nerve, and fire the barrage of battle cruisers turned into missiles. This barrage exposes Evangelion Unit 13, which is kind of the EVA designed to trigger Third Impact, which has been dormant because it has no pilots. At this point, Mari and Asuka jump into action, and much like the fight, Asuka versus the mass production EVA series in End of Evangelion, this is really the moment where it's like, okay, we're going to take our two most competent fighters and they are going to take on waves of the enemy. And unlike the End of Evangelion, Anno isn't mad and depressed, so our heroes don't necessarily fail in their mission. This is the first chance we get to see the rebuilt Unit 2 which is rebuilt using parts from the JA2, which some savvy people on the internet have identified as being a version 2 of the Jet Alone. So Unit 2 has this kind of not so Eva looking battle armor that is extremely reminiscent of the Jet Alone and honestly looks really badass.
I want to know who built the Jet Alone 2. When did they build the Jet Alone 2? How do they have time to build this? Who was it? How is it still in existence right now? I have so many questions about where it came from.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure.
Go on.
The Jet Alone is a UN.
Well, the Jet
unit, right?
Yeah, it's like a UN entity decides to like create this like joint thing, but that's only in the TV anime. It's not in the rebuild movies. So I think it might just be a funny, fun little homage, like just like the Yamato thing, just like having battleships be missiles. I think it's just like for Otaku to be like, haha, I get it, and then move on.
Yeah. So Asuka and Mari go head to head against wave after wave of headless Eva units, and then they land and start to do some more hand-to-hand combat against, honestly, what I would say are like the most Hideo Kojima robots that we've gotten in Eva, where Mari and Asuka have to fight these. There's like a central ball joint, and then two Eva arms, one of which is wielding like a knife, and they try to fight, and they're like little and agile, and they're really reminiscent of like something straight out of Metal Gear Solid 4.
Yeah, they look like those like black things in Metal Gear Solid 4.
Yeah. So they go nuts. The whole point of the mission is for Asuka to take this kind of neutralizing plug and stab it, basically stake the heart of Eva Unit 13. Asuka attempts to do this, and her own AT field stops her. So in another twist or revelation that fan theories were very correct, Asuka removes her eye patch and yanks out a neutralizing plug from her own eye socket, which triggers the ninth angel, which I think is the one that takes over Unit 4. She has actually been infected by the same angel virus that the unit was infected in, which is why throughout the movie she wears a DSS choker. And she voluntarily enters into like kind of an angel berserk form to attack Unit 13 and plays right into Gendo's trap. Unit 13 awakens, brutally decapitates Unit 2, ripping Asuka's entry plug out of it in the process, and takes in Asuka as one of the necessary components to continue the Human Instrumentality Project and bring about Third Impact.
I just want to say, how many times are they going to fall for Gendo's trap? He's constantly don't put the thing in the thing or else I'm going to win. And they're like, haha, we're going to do it. And we're going to stop you by doing this. And he's like, that's what I wanted. That happens like 5 times.
Yeah. Well, Gendo is really propped up by master strategist Fuyutsuki.
No, but it's only one. It's a singular strategy that just keeps working. Like,
beta man.
Yeah, just like with Shinji and Kaoru at the in the second movie.
Right.
He's just like, if we have to put the thing in the thing or else it's going to be bad, and then putting the thing in the thing was actually the bad thing. So this keeps happening, and
sure.
I don't understand how they're just like, are we sure we want to put the thing in the thing? Is that gonna start something or stop something? And
yeah.
They never have that question. They just kind of continue on.
Yeah. Mari gets bogged down fighting the little arm hoppy thing. She actually loses both of her newly reconstructed arms off of her unit. Which unit does Mari pilot? 9?
I don't know, man. There's too many units.
I think it's 9.
I can't keep track of them.
So, at this point, Gendo is like, you know what? I got this in the bag. I'm going to go rub my victory in the face of my former colleagues. So he flies. Turns out Anno has forsaken a bit of his humanity. He flies over to the Wonder.
You keep saying,
sorry,
this
Gendo.
has happened multiple
God, I always
times.
do this.
Some kind of projection on your part.
It really is. So Gendo has forsaken a certain level of his humanity, and in the chaos that is Asuka losing the fight, the Wonder is pinned down by the third sister ship, making there 4 in total, 4 Horsemen of the Apocalypse, 4 Wonder class ships. So Gendo goes and he flies to the surface of the Wonder. Misato and Ritsuko go to confront him, and Ritsuko does the most badass thing ever. Without hesitation, plants a bullet right in Gendo's head. Unfortunately, Gendo has, it looks like, fused with the Atom embryo. So he is part angel, and he literally scoops his brain back up and puts it in the hole in his head that Ritsuko put there. He confronts them and says, you're not going to be able to stop me. I got this in the bag. He's there to recapture the Wonder because he needs it to open the doors of Guff.
Well, hold on. I thought he already opened the doors of Guff.
Yeah. No, he's opening them.
Well, how did he get the cyborg body?
Because he has to... That was... there was some other ritual, they say, the rites of something else.
Really? I thought that was the doors of Guff opening. He opened the doors of Guff and it gave him this weird body.
No, it was. I think they call it the rites of Nebuchadnezzar or something like that.
No. He used the key of Nebuchadnezzar to.
There we go. Which is the Atom embryo.
But that's what he needs to open the doors of Guff. That's the key.
He needs the 4 ships because they simulate stuff.
Yeah, this part doesn't make any sense.
I will explain,
and but I don't feel like it's supposed to.
Yeah,
I think
I'll explain in a minute why it absolutely does not matter.
No, it doesn't matter at all. It's just whatever.
So
just let them say jargon and just keep watching.
Yeah. So he's there to retrieve EVA Unit 1. He needs Unit 1 and Unit 13 to accomplish his goal. So he lands on the ship, and then a vessel of Atom crashes into the Wonder and takes it over, which is something you see almost happen in 3.0, but it actually happens in this one, which unlocks all the doors. So Shinji is able to get out onto the deck and confront his father. Gendo brushes him off, ignores him again, climbs inside Unit 13, which has consumed Asuka's entry plug, and flies off to the anti-universe. There's a long conversation on the deck. Shinji says, I'm gonna go after him, and I'm gonna take care of this. I'm gonna end this. Shinji really steps up and says, I'm gonna take responsibility and do this. Unfortunately, there are not one but 2 really pissed off people that absolutely don't want Shinji anywhere near Neva. So one of the new Villa Bridge crew, Midori Kitakami, who's the pink-haired bridge personnel, she threatens to shoot Shinji. And then Sakura Suzuhara, Toji's sister, and the one who was very adamant that Shinji never piloted an EVA again, actually tries to shoot Shinji. Misato intervenes, and in an absolute parallel to the end of Evangelion, is shot kind of in the, I guess, liver area, on her right side. And then there's a long discussion about, no, I have to do this, don't try to stop me. And they fire off some more bullets, but no one seems to care about ricochets, so everybody's fine. Ritsuko has them get Shinji's original plug suit, which apparently Misato has been storing in her captain's quarters. Misato and Shinji have a very mature conversation about what needs to happen, and it's a very interesting how it's an interesting way to do their final conversation from End of Evangelion, which is often cited as like the most inappropriate way to send someone off to die. In the End of Evangelion, Misato is like kisses Shinji and says, we'll do the rest when you get back, and pushes him into an elevator, and he goes away and she gets blown up. In this one, they have a very mature heart-to-heart conversation. Shinji says that, I met your son. He's a great guy. I'm going to go take care of this. And Misato's like, okay, we'll back you up. They hug. It's very nice and touching. And then Mari arrives from the weird blown up nerve headquarters where she's been fighting off those little hand guys. Sends her unit into berserk mode, bites the arm off of the Vessel of Adam, attaches it to her unit, which apparently is designed to be an overlapping model, which means she can just kind of hot swap parts.
I guess.
So she kills that vessel. They reclaim the Wonder, and then Mari grabs Shinji to enter the anti-universe and chase after Gendo.
Yes, the anti-universe.
Yeah, the anti-universe.
That was always available, in case you didn't know.
Yeah, it was there. And this is where it gets really kind of crazy. But essentially,
this is where it gets crazy.
This is where it gets nuts. Essentially, what happens is, Gendo enters a plane of existence to enact his additional impact plan, where he wants to wrestle power from the gods that created the world, invest that power into humanity, and create a unified, singular consciousness with all human souls. Mm-hmm. That's the human instrument. That's his application of the Human Instrumentality Project. So he enters this conceptual zone called the anti-universe, where, for all intents and purposes, physical bodies cease to matter, and it's really just a mental fencing that's going to happen between any two entities that enter this place. And so Shinji and Mari enter in Unit 9, and Mari can't get a lock on Gendo because he keeps having Unit 13 like teleport around. So there's no way that Mari is going to be able to fight Unit 13. At which point Shinji's like, it's fine, I got this. And so one of these souls in... Okay. So in Rebuild 2.0, Shinji makes this effort to save his Rei Ayanami. He does so, he rescues her, and he brings her into the cockpit of Unit 1. But unfortunately, this triggers third impact, or the process of third impact. And much like in the original Evangelion experiment, where Yui Ikari is absorbed into the entry plug of Unit 1, Rei Ayanami is also absorbed into the entry plug. So Rei's soul is in Unit 1. Shinji, throughout 3.0 and Thrice Upon a Time, demonstrates somewhat of a psychic link with this Rei Ayanami. So he says to Mari, he's like, I got this, it's fine. Hey, Ayanami. And Rei opens a portal between, Shinji and Unit 1. So Shinji steps through and enters the cockpit for Unit 1, where he confronts Gendo. Because Gendo in Unit 13 is carrying around the torso of Unit 1 because its legs and arms are missing. Shinji takes over piloting Unit 1. It's revealed that he has an infinite sync rate with Unit 1. So he does that amazing resurrection thing where he regrows the limbs, and he starts essentially dueling with Gendo. And this, like, I was thoroughly enjoying the movie up to this point, and this is where it kind of like enters my like absolute joy. Yeah. It's just like from this point forward, I love the movie with no reservation.
It's like the purest form of fan service for all the fans of Evangelion.
But also in like a non-pandering way.
I'm saying it's like the ultimate form of fan service.
Yeah.
It's just like, yes. Everything about this is great.
So they start fighting, and again, like they're in a theoretical space. And so, Gendo very clearly explains, like, you're just seeing stuff. Your brain is adding structure to things that have no structure. So theoretically, Gendo and Shinji are experiencing their conflict in totally different ways. But they start to fight. They go through, they start fighting in the Evas, and it seems really weird in 3D. And you're like, why are the buildings not reacting in a realistic way? They're kind of like tumbling around like models.
It looks like a CG anime Gendo, from like 2005, just like really bad.
Really bad. And then Gendo, counterattacks Unit 1 and throws Shinji across the city, and Shinji hits a backdrop and he falls off a stage, and it's all revealed to be a sound stage. Kind of something that you would have in like a tokusatsu or like a Godzilla, where it's like they were just guys in big rubber suits. And then they start kind of cycling through iconic scenes: Misato's apartment, the classroom, Rei's apartment. But they're too equally matched. They can't best each other. And it's revealed that Unit 1 and Unit 13 are a matched pair. Unit 1 is hope and Unit 13 is despair, and they're both necessary to complete Gendo's plan. And I think something really interesting here is it's almost suggested that Unit 13 possesses... this is actually what it is. Unit 13 possesses Gendo's soul. And Unit 1 possesses Yui Ikari, his wife. And his whole motivation for everything he's doing is that he wants to be reunited with Yui. So he needs Yui and himself to complete the rites necessary for triggering his additional impact and his pursuit of kind of godhood and universal consciousness. At this point, Shinji's like, I'm done fighting. I just want to talk to you. And I think, because they're in a theoretical space, I think Shinji's will bests Gendo's. And also Gendo, like, Yui is not on Gendo's side. So she doesn't allow him to continue with his process in the anti-universe. And so Shinji is able to confront his father, and we go into maybe the best execution of episode 25 and 26 from the original series, where we get a full dissection of Gendo Ikari. Why is he the way he is? It goes through his childhood and how he interacts with people and his likes and his dislikes and why he feels separate from everyone. How Yui was a redeeming force in his life and why he loved her so much, and what like great pain he felt when she died. And so Shinji, for the very first time, gets to understand his father as like a person, as opposed to just kind of this force that's been directing his life. And at this point, Gendo quite literally, or I guess theoretically and conceptually, gets kicked off the train. And he's like put aside. He's like, okay, we're done psychoanalyzing you. It's Shinji's turn. Kaji and Kaoru kind of take over. Their souls emerge and start to discuss and dissect things. And you get this period of introspection for the main characters, Shinji and Asuka, where it kind of analyzes, their thoughts and their feelings and where they want to go. And once again, as Shinji has been presented many times, and as it is revealed, this is a cycle. These conversations and these events happen on repeat. Kaoru appears and he laments the fact that he's forced to play this role time and time again. And it's this direct confirmation that the Rebuild series is a cycle upon the Evangelion story that is a continuation or an extension of the original series. And it's also kind of suggested that the other permutations of Evangelion, like the Evangelion manga, is also another cycle in this. And at this point, Shinji is faced with the choice of okay, what do I do? Because he controls the process forward. I totally forgot about Misato's sacrifice.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, you skipped a part.
Here.
There's a part with a big ray and a bunch of stuff happens.
Yeah. I mean, that's so much of it is set dressing, but we get these things that are enacted in the end of Evangelion. Gendo, as he's starting the third impact, or his additional impact, you get a giant version of Rei that appears. He starts to try to consume all the souls on the earth. And in one of the pivotal things, so there are two spears. There's the Lance of Longinus and the Lance of Cassius. And Shinji wields Cassius, which is called the Spear of Hope. Gendo has Longinus, which I suppose is the Spear of Despair. And that's why they're equally matched. And one of the things that's thrown around is that these holy relics offer the power to manipulate reality. And so it's deduced, Ritsuko and the crew of the Wonder get this dump of information from their interaction with the other ships, and they discover these ships have the components to make spears. And they just kind of Misato just decides that they are going to sculpt their own reality and create one more holy spear. And Misato sacrifices herself. She has the rest of the Wonder crew escape. And using the spinal column from the Wonder, she crafts a brand new spear and crashes it into the anti-universe and sends it to Shinji. Mari shoves it through the eye of the giant Ray. I'm trying to think of what that spear is called now. Gaius.
Which, by the way, there's a giant Ray.
Yeah, by the way, there's a giant Ray. There's just so much that goes on here. There is no concise way to explain this plot, but it is honestly very straightforward. I think if you watch the movie... Yeah, you can
follow what's going on. As long as you don't get hung up and lost on words and what they're calling everything. The narrative is really easy to see what's going on, which I think is it led it to be actually enjoyable to watch in the theater by me, even though I couldn't follow some of the dialogue, and especially during the last half, I had no idea what they were talking about in Japanese. But it didn't really matter because I felt that I pretty much consumed the intent of what's going on, because it doesn't matter all these words and things. It's just no, just what's happening on the screen is pretty straightforward. That's what's happening.
Yeah. And so the spear Gaius that Misato, Misato enacts her statement that, the miracles of men are, better than the miracles of gods. And so that's how Shinji gets the upper hand in the anti-universe. He receives the spear of Gaius, or the lance of Gaius. And it's really just symbolic. It doesn't really play into anything, but it does permit him to make the decision about how he wants to shape the universe. And he decides to break the cycle. He's going to create a Neon Genesis, a new world devoid of Evangelion. That's what he's going to strip from it this time. He's going to stop repeating the cycle of Eva pilots and angels, and he's going to remove that aspect. And he acknowledges that, pain happens in life, but we keep going. He's respecting Kaji's sacrifice and the desire to keep things diverse and unique. And so we end up back on the beach that we also arrive at the end of Evangelion. And this time Asuka she's no longer 14. She's aged the 14 years. She's an adult, and she's allowed to get her introspective moment. She has discussions. There's this really beautiful moment where Kensuke appears to her and says, you can be whoever you want to be. You can just be Asuka, like be yourself. Shinji confronts Rei, acknowledges her, and they have the discussion about creating the world without, a neon genesis, a new era. And then we get some really beautiful, Shinji sits on a beach and he stares out at a calm, serene land or like horizon. There's no more red. Life has kind of returned to the world he's built. And then Mari crashes in, or crashes out of the water in her unit 9 plus 10 plus 11 plus 12, because she's fused with the other vessels of Adam. And she jumps into the water and comes ashore and rescues Shinji and pulls him out of it. Which then cuts to an adult Shinji at a train station. Mari surprises him. We get glimpses of an adult Kaoru and Rei and Asuka.
You skip the part where they stab themselves with a spear.
Gendo gets his connection with Yui. So, sorry.
Whatever.
Shinji is going to sacrifice himself. Basically stab himself with the lance of Gaius to create this new world, but Yui rejects him. She pushes him out into the sea of life, and takes that burden onto herself.
Okay, by the way,
and then Gendo,
Yui was there the whole time. We learned that at this point.
Yeah. She just didn't want to be present because she was waiting for them to kind of come to these revelations themselves. I guess if there's one thing I wish Yui got the same treatment that Gendo does. But I guess in the original series, we actually do get an episode that's more of Yui's perspective.
Yeah, in the original one, we have no idea what Gendo's ever, what his real, true actions and motivations, like why he does what he does. So it was nice to be like, oh, this is Gendo talking. I forgot how this sounds.
So then, Gendo and Yui sacrifice themselves to create this new world. As the catalyst or the sacrifice necessary. Blood on the wall. And then, Mari and Shinji run out of a train station together, and that's the end. Roll credits, cue Utada Hikaru song. So, I have a hard time imagining a more satisfying conclusion to, 20 years of Evangelion, 25 years of Evangelion. Yeah. And it's, they're very clear. This movie, I think is a rather mature point for Hideaki Anno and the team at Studio Kara that built it. There's a lot of set dressing for everything. There's a lot of technobabble and pseudoscience and pseudo-religious nomenclature, but it's super direct. Shinji he feels bad about what he caused in 3.0. He processes those emotions. The people in his life are supportive and help him work through it. his friends come to terms with what happened, and they make their own self-determination on how they want to proceed. He's forgiven by Misato. He reconciles with her. He confronts his father. He has a conversation with him. He he understands his father more. He ultimately, through the support of his friends, he wins the battle, and he's able to correct things. And maybe you should just cut that 2 minutes as like the summary of the movie. Because it's super straightforward, and like it's also happy. Like, this is, if you think about the end of Evangelion is an angry movie.
Yeah.
Like, Gendo got fucking did it again. Ano got death threats for how Gainax handled the original end of Evangelion. And it's really well known that his approach to the end of Evangelion was, okay, I'm going to give you what you want, but yeah, you're going to see the best Eva pilot, Asuka, take on an army of enemies and be super successful. Then she's going to get fucking destroyed at the end of that, because that's what you deserve.
Well,
or
I don't think that's super accurate, because that was all planned out beforehand, before he got death threats, before all this. That was like planned for the original end in the first place.
I think he maybe made it a little extra gruesome, and maybe played with their emotions a bit. But there's definitely other stuff in the end of Evangelion where he's like, he puts those death threats on the screen as things are flashing by. He wasn't happy with his audience, I think, or he wasn't. He wasn't happy making Evangelion. He was in a really bad place, and I don't think the end of Evangelion helped that so much. And you get that kind of amazing sequence in the end of Evangelion when it displays the empty theater as kind of the mirror to the people watching it, which is a really kind of aggressive thing to do to your audience. There's none of that negative energy in Thrice Upon a Time. It feels like a movie that is so much more at peace with its conclusion.
It's like the ultimate, how do I say? Like, it's like the ultimate conclusion based on a looping like stream of consciousness that continues to like go round and round and round and round, and then ultimately arrive at this outcome, which probably parallels like the growth and development of a human being from if we were like going to like represent Ano and like how this story plays out. I guess the lack of maturity at the time of making the original becomes the driving force to create something like Evangelion in the first place, and then the spitefulness of how it ends, and then growing as a person in life and coming to realize that maybe like it deserves another shot at telling the story that you wanted to tell, based on like new growth and new perspective. Like, oh, maybe I wasn't right about some of these things, I should do it again. And then seeing that whole like loop come full circle again to portray like a positive outcome based on new experience and new understanding of like the world around you, and like acceptance of painful things. That seems to be like the main focus, is like accepting life's pain and life's emotional stimuli that like cause you to be sad or happy, and also teaching the audience that it's okay to not obsess over everything, and it can just be a fun show that you like as an entertainment medium in your own real life, and you can go outside now and that it's over.
Yeah, I think that is it is such an interesting point. something that we've talked about is one of the reveals that isn't, I don't think it's substantial to the actual overall plot of this movie, so I didn't mention it. This isn't one of those plot points I forgot. It's revealed in this movie that at least in this cycle of the rebuilds, Asuka herself is a clone similar to Ayanami. She's called the Shikinami type. And you see at one point a collection of Asuka clones similar to Rey clones in the tanks. And I think there's a lot in this movie that is Anno trying to have a conversation with the more obsessive Eva fans, or maybe just otaku in general. Because it's like, in calling Asuka a clone, I know that we might differ on this, so I'd love to hear your opinion on it. But I felt like in acknowledging that Asuka is at this point essentially a clone, it's like kind of Anno saying, hey, look, I recognize that when Evangelion came out, we introduced a character type that people really got obsessed with, and now every show has an Asuka. It's these very interesting nods to otaku culture throughout this movie. And I think you're right. I think it's Anno trying to have a conversation with otaku and be like, hey, we got to acknowledge our faults and maybe look at other things.
Yeah. I don't know how much, like, it's hard to speculate about how much it's like a direct meta kind of like direct like, I don't know, standing on the soapbox and telling otaku what they should and shouldn't do. Like, it seems like you can draw that conclusion and you can totally draw parallels, and it works as like a academic essay. But I wonder like how much he's actually consciously trying to do that, like to be like, hey, you kids, you need to not take everything so seriously, or you need to like stop obsessing over this stuff. I don't know. I feel like it's not so deliberate. It's just like that's how he feels, and it just works its way in to his attitudes in making plots. You know, he just you can just easily draw a parallel because like that's just how he feels naturally as a natural state. But I don't know if he's like actively being like, hey, Asuka's a clone and I created these archetypes and introduced them into anime, and now I want them all to be killed or something, you know, something like that. I don't think it's like that. I think it's just like, just like, I don't know, a passive sort of acceptance of you know, how it's built from since then.
It's super interesting because Amazon showed an abnormally in touch approach to the release of Evangelion Thrice Upon a Time. And they paired the release with also releasing the rest of the rebuild movies and some documentaries about Hideaki Anno. One is called Hideaki Anno, The Final Challenges of Evangelion, which is an NHK documentary. It's a two-part documentary following Anno through the creation and release of this movie. And the other one is called Hideaki Anno and Hitoshi Matsumoto Fireside Chat. Hitoshi Matsumoto is a famous Japanese comedian and director. And they just have, you know, it's 2 episodes, 2 40-minute episode conversations they have. And especially the NHK documentary really shows Anno kind of struggling with how to write Evangelion. But also in the Fireside Chat, he admits that, or he states that there's like no such thing as a true documentary. Because on one hand, what was that?
He says this in the NHK one as well. He has a great quote about documentaries, which I love. That's my favorite thing he's ever said. Well, that's not true, but it's a really good. I was like, oh, that's awesome. I never thought of that, but I now agree.
Yeah, he's like, you can't have a documentary because the subjects, first and foremost, the person making the documentary is going to edit it, and that's going to distinguish it from real life. But also, you can't, like, I act for the camera. And he acknowledges, like, several times when talking with Matsumoto that he's like, yeah, I'm just acting this way for the camera. And so I think that shows his hand as, like, a very deliberate and conscious individual. So it's rough because Anno is in the same kind of generation and ilk as someone as like an Imaishi or the folks at Studio Trigger, where they don't talk about their work and they don't acknowledge whether or not there was authorial intent in some of the stuff they do. Which on one hand is kind of frustrating because it would be great if we could just have Anno be like, yeah, Rei was a clone because I was basically copying the princess from the Castle of Cagliostro as a character type, and like this like damsel in distress moe anime character that Miyazaki gave us. And so now that Asuka is the prototypical tsundere character, we'll just, she's a clone now too, obviously. Like, it'd be great if you would just come out and say that, but we're only left with this ambiguous non-discussion of the themes and topics of the show.
I think that it would be a disservice if he did something like that, because I think totally. The whole point is, like, and he says this in the documentary, like in the documentary he states, like, if you read the script and you don't get it, I have failed as the director. Like, I failed, and I'm going to rewrite it again so that you get it. And, the people around him are like, can you just tell us what you mean? And he's like, no, I cannot do that. You have to read it and get it, or else I failed. And so, like, he's adamant about that. Yeah. And I think that attitude, plus just kind of like disengaging with the medium or with the work after you're done making it and being like, okay, I made it, next thing, is the beauty of it. It's just like, it can mean whatever you want. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, just take it however you want to take it. Like, that's the point. Yeah.
And that is kind of a really powerful moment in the NHK documentary when they finally done with all the work, and he screens the movie for the first time for Studio Kara. He walks out of the theater. He introduces the movie. He walks out, and he goes and sits in his laptop, and he starts working on some other project, which is probably
Shin Ultraman
or Shin Kamen
Rider. I know, and then I love, they ask him, they're like, hey, what are you doing? Like, you don't want to watch? And he's like, no, I never watched it. I never watched it after I'm done. Like, I just move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
Like, what a badass.
And like, I think you're right. I think that something that this movie really unlocked is something that a lot of people have said about Eva over the course of the years. The religious iconography that Eva uses is nothing more than an aesthetic collection of things. Like, if you chase any of the meaning behind the, like, calling it the Lance of Longinus or the Door of Guff or the Golgotha object, if you look at any of those things, yes, there's like a shallow surface level parallel to what they represent in the show, but the reality is that they're just kind of like they sound cool and they look cool, so therefore we use them. And at the surface level of the Rebuild movies, I think there's a very straightforward, easy to follow plot. I think the points the movie makes about accepting pain, I think you said it really well. It happens. You got to feel it and then move on. Those things are all there at the surface.
I wonder if this is just my random theory, but I wonder if some of this is like deliberate punishment for people who get lost in the details. Like, like, you're not supposed to worry about it, but if you do, you get trapped in this like agonizing trying to figure it out, and like that's what you deserve if you're not willing to like back up and just take everything as it comes.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're right. if you dive too deep. I do want to give so much credit to Studio Kara and the entire team that worked on this movie, because there is a ton in it where, like us, you know, we've seen the series so many times, we've seen the end of Evangelion so many times. This movie is littered with homages and allusions and direct references, indirect references. There's like, we watched it with friend of the show, Ken, he's seen bits and pieces of the original series, but he hasn't seen it all the way through. And I don't think he's seen End of Evangelion. So he still got it because he had binge watched all the Rebuild movies and he was fine. Self-contained, it's totally fine. But you and I were watching it and things would stand out to us where it's like, oh, wow. What's a really good example?
Well, like, I mean,
like the Jetalon thing, that doesn't, because it's not in the Rebuild.
Or just simple things like the big ray, or like being on the beach, like
oh yeah, the beach.
I mean, the simplest,
using line art, the music notes, all that stuff. The when Shinji confronts Ray, long-haired Ray, there's a projector playing between them, and it's sequences. It's literally like the title sequence from End of Evangelion.
Like he says, like, it's a Neon Genesis, and it's like the actual. It's like, I love it. It's a little bit breaking the fourth wall kind of thing, and you're like, this is cool.
And and something to really point out for folks who hear them say, even in Japanese, if you're watching the dub version, they probably just say Neon Genesis as well. It'd be really funny if they said it's a Shinseki. But the Japanese title for Evangelion, Shinseki Evangelion, that's translated into English as Neon Genesis Evangelion. And in Japanese, they just say the katakana word Neon Genesis. Stuff like that. And I feel like there is a certain level that it plays with. There is something that I find kind of actually interesting going on. And this is, you're going to tell me don't chase the rabbit here. But the whole anti-universe thing and that construct of like, this is all just theoretical and, we're just projecting our reality. I'm really, and this is probably rooted in Evangelion, but I really like the aesthetics of magic. Like, no, hear me out.
I gotta write something down. I gotta write down that's the title of the episode.
Oh, the aesthetics of magic. Like, I hold no belief that magic is real, that, people can cast spells or work things like that. But I do find the aesthetics of it interesting and cool. It's like a visual style that I like. And through that exposure, there's this concept called chaos magic. And, there's, I don't want to dive too much into it because you start sounding like a rambling crazy guy, but, there's these things, right-hand path magic, left-hand path magic. Chaos magic is this idea that our minds are powerful conductors of magical forces, right? And what we have to do is we have to bind those forces to some type of schematic or some type of discipline to make spells work, right? And so what I found really interesting watching Evangelion is I almost feel like Anno recognized that through Evangelion and through just a more globalization of fandom and the exposure of Japan to more global ideas, the base level Judeo-Christian iconography that the original series used wasn't going to work. And so I think Anno pulls in a lot of, these more esoteric Kabbalic. I mean, there's a lot of Kabbalah in the end of Evangelion, but even more left field concepts around
like spiritualism,
magical thinking, the spiritualism. Yeah. And so this like anti-universe thing and this idea of like, oh, you know, we're just projecting our reality and this is what we can conceptualize. It was like, oh, this is like, if I wanted to read too much into this, this is like Anno talking about, you know, chaos magic, and he's just put the structure that he needed to work. Like Gendo uses, you know, he has all these different rites that they're performing to start the additional impact and obtain godhood. It's a very like chaos magic way of approaching things where it's like, okay, I'm gonna use this ritual and bend my will to it to enact this thing. But you're totally right. None of that matters because the story, like Anno tells the story he wants to tell on the surface level. And it's when you start pursuing all of these things where it's like, I want to give them credit because Anno and the other directors that worked on this movie are very smart people. Like they know what they're doing. They have artistic intent. Maybe some of it is subconscious. You know, they're just bringing in things they think are cool. They're going to do Operation Yamato and reenact a battle like that. But also, you're right. If you start digging into those things, you're just going to spiral and get stuck down there, and you're going to miss the beautiful points the movie makes.
That's ultimately what I think is the point. I don't know about this chaos magic, but I think it's like blatantly making the point at the very end, just like especially with like imaginary Evangelion.
Exactly.
Where you're like, okay, I see what he's trying to tell us a little bit.
Yeah, and that's why I didn't even bring that up in the plot discussion, because like this ultimate thing at the end, this imaginary Evangelion, it's not even necessary to the plot that he's trying to say. It's more of like, hey, you guys have all built this up in your head so much, but it's fake.
Yeah.
Like you know this is fake, right? This is literally imaginary.
Yeah, like don't go stab people in Akiba. Like it's not worth it.
Yeah.
This is just a movie. Just a movie I made. Okay? That's kind of the vibe I got like at the end. Where I'm like, yeah, he's just freeing us from it by outright using this kind of symbolism to demonstrate it.
And he gives us the key.
He gives us the key. It's up to you to unlock the doors of Goof.
Your shackles. Yeah. Undo your own. And like this has been, you know, kind of, it's made its way around the anti-Twitter sphere, but I really think people should watch the final challenge of Evangelion because you get to see a bit about Anno's wife. She's a
famous mangaka.
She's a famous mangaka and author, Moyoko Anno. And
perhaps the most interesting person in the world, is more interesting than Anno because someone who can love and be with Anno is perhaps more interesting than Anno himself.
And like, you know, I think one of the things that maybe Anno didn't, he's a very calculating individual, so maybe he did intend for this cipher to be out there in the world, but you know, his wife is the inspiration for Mari in Eva. And you know, Mari ends up as someone who kind of sticks through it to make sure that Shinji's okay, and ultimately pulls Shinji out of his isolation. And you know, it's really hard to deny the, you know, watching the final challenge of Evangelion when you see Anno doing the location scouting in the train station that you see at the end of the movie, paralleled with, you know, Shinji sitting exactly where Anno sits, being pulled out of the station by Mari. And I think that's just really interesting. Like, damn, man, you spent, 14 years telling this story that ultimately ends in you just being like, hey, I love my wife. Which I think is like really cool. It is an interesting like moment where he's not so secretive about it, which I thought was really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that goes back to what I was thinking about as like the interpretation of the ending, where it's like reject the clone, like dedicating your life to these 2D clone girls, and like choose real life, and that's the end of the whole thing. Like go with a real person, like a real human being who has emotions and thoughts, not like these clones of characters.
It's almost like it really makes me want to like rewatch all of Evangelion, but it's almost like, no, that's not the point.
Yeah, that's like that's the opposite of the point.
It's like the antithesis of what it is.
I think it's extremely satisfying, and I couldn't think of a more perfect way to end all of Evangelion. Like it made its impact. Like it wasn't a flop. It wasn't just like, well, that's kind of annoying. It was like, dang, that's good. It's making us talk about it, and it's making us think about it, and that's all that you can ask for. I
have literally been thinking about this movie for like 2 weeks straight. It doesn't help that the soundtrack for the movie is on Spotify. Search for the composer's name, Shiro Sagisu. It's in the title of the album. Oddly enough, his name is generally written in Romaji on Spotify, so you can find all of his, like most of his albums that he's worked on, like a lot of Evangelion stuff, SSSS, Gridman, stuff like that. You can find it by just searching Shiro Sagisu in English in Spotify. But unfortunately, you can't find this album because for whatever reason, they put his name in kanji for this one. But it's amazing. Like the music in this movie is phenomenal.
I just had a thought, just kind of randomly.
Hit me.
When Asuka's on the beach, and she I think she's on the beach when she says this, that they discuss like how Shinji used to like Asuka, but now doesn't. Right? Like that was in the past.
Yeah.
And Asuka goes with Kensuke now.
Yeah.
I'm sure this is not the intention. Maybe it is, but is Anno saying that like, yeah, back in the day when we were all super weeby otaku, you're supposed to like Asuka, but now save it for the otaku. like Kensuke deserves Asuka, and like me as a real person who's broken through, I'm gonna go with my wife and leave Evangelion behind.
That is an interesting observation. I had not even put together the fact that Kensuke is an otaku in the world of Evangelion.
Well, right. He is like,
and Asuka ends up living with him and, kind of having this interesting relationship with him.
Like Shinji's like, yeah, I reject that. I'm going to move on. But like, you belong with the otaku.
Yeah. Damn. Yeah, I think you might be right. I mean, I think that there is an actual bond that Kensuke forms with Asuka.
Well, sure, like,
and I
in the real story, in this,
and I think that's based in Kensuke being such a
just a good person,
active force in helping humanity. Because Asuka says at one point she doesn't interact with Village 3 because she's there to protect it, which is a way of safeguarding her own emotions. But also Kensuke serves a similar role where he is facilitating the protection of Village 3. So I think there's a bit more there, but also it is extremely amusing that the actual otaku in the universe ends up with Asuka, who is like
the otaku bait,
ultimate otaku bait.
Yeah, that's what I just realized this now. I was like, wait a minute. But that's all I got. That's all my revelations.
I had an interesting one that as I was checking things before the episode on an Evangelion Wikipedia, I'm not the first. This is not an original thought. Apparently, others have had it, but I find it very interesting that the crew of the villa, the soldiers in Villa dress very similarly to the soldiers that attack Nerve in the end of Evangelion.
Do they?
Yeah, they have very similar like skin tight suits and the like bulletproof vests. It's very apparent when you see Misato after she's shot. I was like, oh damn, these look exactly like those outfits. And it's kind of interesting because Villa becomes the anti-Nerve force in this rendition of Evangelion, whereas those soldiers that attack Nerve, technically are the anti-Nerve force.
That's interesting. Yeah. Like they just they take on the role that the UN did in the original.
Yeah.
Like you gotta stop this.
I
interesting.
There's the other thing, like I've told this story numerous times, but I have seen the end of Evangelion probably over 24 times. And there's so many cool, brief visual allusions to the end of Evangelion. There are some like outright, like big ones, like the projector showing the opening.
I feel like Rey is the biggest and most obvious.
Yeah, physically the biggest. But even when Rey appears, you get like a 3/4 shot from behind where the like the wave pattern appears in the sky, which is really cool. Or like the wings that come out of the 4 ships are very similar. There's like a brief image of the Tree of Knowledge. There's so much cool stuff that's like scattered throughout here. So it is like a visual feast. Like I'm so happy. I'll probably watch this movie Thrice Upon a Time several more times. Unfortunately, I probably would have watched it a third time before this recording if I had the time to do it.
Well, I hope that like a DVD or a Blu-ray version is released with like it's like a little bit more uncut. They usually do that, like a 3.33 plus 1.1.
Yeah, that would be really cool.
Equals
a 3.33 plus 1.11
equals 4.44.
Yeah.
$sign and bar graph parenthesis.
Yeah.
Or some stupid combination of symbols.
Man, so good. Yeah. I really want like model kits. Like I would love to get the Unit 2 JA variant. I guess the one, like if no, we do get an extended battle scene with Unit 1. Like Unit 1 spear fights Unit 13 and it's so cool. There really is nothing that's like missing in my mind. Like I wish, like we even get like Ibuki and Hyuga, the Nerve crew guys, the Nerve bridge people. They're not in it so much. Sorry, Ibuki's in it. Aoba and Hyuga aren't so prominent in this, but Maya Ibuki gets to say like the iconic line, "This is why I don't like young men." We get amazing. I think we get the best version of every character. In my mind, that's exemplified by the fact that Ritsuko, when she confronts Ano, her former lover, she just shoots him. Where in the end of Evangelion, like she can't bring herself to do it. He gets that like cut off line, the truth is, and then he shoots her. In this one, she's just like, no, I'm a battle-hardened badass. I'm just going to shoot you twice.
Yeah. It's also 14 years removed. Whereas in the original, It's like this, they were active lovers at the time.
Right. I feel like we get the best version of Misato. She's a confident, capable leader. She has that mature interaction with Shinji. Asuka shows a lot of growth. She does kind of flip out at Shinji, but she also like simmers down, and she, is competent in battle. And
she's also a mature person.
Yeah. 28 mentally, as might be the case. I just think everybody's great in this movie. I think it fires on all cylinders. It's a 10 out of 10.
It's as if
I loved it.
Evangelion is a singular visual novel with multiple endings and paths, and this tree was like the true end. The true end. The true good end. Yeah, true good end.
Yeah, if you think about like, that's a really good way to put it. And especially, that's a really good way to look at it. Like the original series, you might consider like it's a good end, but it's like very cerebral. End of Evangelion is a bad end. I always think End of Eva is like very hopeful end. I guess, but it's like
you don't get to see.
It leaves a lot more hanging.
Yeah, you don't get to see it all like unfold. It being good, but I always thought it was. Well, it turns out it wasn't that hopeful. Now that we've seen this, but
because we had to do it
at
again.
The time, I thought it was.
You brought up a really interesting thing when we first talked about the movie. It's totally possible that the end of Evangelion is like the first loop. Is the first start of the loop, and that's where Shinji gains the ability to cycle the timeline, because that's where the series always tends to end. It ends on that beach, and so that's kind of almost like Shinji looping back there. And I kind of think that might hold water in the sense that Shinji ultimately takes over control of instrumentality. He gets the Lance of Gaia, sure, to alter it again, but he kind of, you could almost say that Lance allows him to modify it to a greater extent than he's ever been able to before. And so maybe he is the one that ultimately always wrestles control and controls the process of going back and trying to do it right. You can't run away from it. Yeah.
I like the number one evidence for the looping is the fact that we see Rei in the first opening seconds of both, alluding to the okay, try again.
Yep. And or just like Kaoru looking at the different coffins that he's awoken from, stretching to and fro.
When Shinji's on the phone in the very, very first episode, and the birds fly away, and you look over and there's Rei, and then she disappears. To me, that evidence is that that's the point at which it loops. And then it also makes me believe that even in the original series, that wasn't the first time around.
Interesting. Yeah.
But who knows? It never explains why you see Rei there flashing for a second.
Yeah.
So in my mind, I'm like, okay, that must be the point where it all starts, the new redo. And then
interesting, because Shinji sees Rei again like that in this
in Rebuild. In the very first movie, because it's shot for shot the same as the original.
Right. I actually meant in Thrice Upon a Time. We get he's sitting in the ruins of Nerve, and he stares across the water before.
Oh, and Rei. I missed that.
The new Rei approaches, and he sees the old Rei.
Oh.
Interesting.
So then maybe not. I don't know.
I guess we're gonna have to watch it again from the top.
I guess so. Maybe that's My only like remaining question is like what the actual intent and implication was of seeing Rey in the very, very beginning of the series and also the movies.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just like, was it a vision? Was she actually there? Is it all an illusion? Like, what's going on?
Yeah. Oh, that makes me think about, like clearly, so if we think of Rey as a vessel, for some clone or fragment of Yui Ikari's soul, because she's cloned and created in Yui's image. Maybe there's some connection between Shinji and Rey. I mean, there is a connection between Shinji and Rey for that fact. And so maybe that's a component of why he can see her like that. Something I absolutely love about the conclusion of this movie is Gendo's realization that, you know, his dead wife was present in his life the entire time had he taken the time to engage with their child. Like,
yeah,
you know, the best components of Yui lived on in Shinji.
Yeah.
And he just ignores it because he's so hurt he can't see that.
Yeah. Which
absolutely amazing.
Which I feel like is a very, very real
revelation.
Like human, like obviously something like this has happened in his life.
Yeah.
Like it's very obvious. Like that's a super real psychological thing that would happen.
Yeah. And man, there's so many good revelations in the final challenge of Evangelion, especially because Anno talks about his father, who lost his leg in an accident, and he talks about, you know, how because he was raised by his father, who was really resentful about, you know, losing a part of his body, and losing it because of something that he didn't deem as his fault. It was the mistake of another person. Anno like admits to loving to draw incomplete robots or damaged robots, things missing arms and legs, which is something you see throughout Eva, like constantly. Yeah. There's just so much. I think it's a very something else we talked about when we debriefed from our first viewing is like, this is almost like Anno without pretense or without any true arrogance in execution. Like he's done with that. He's done with almost to a certain extent, he's done with the mystery. He's very open about who he is, what story he's trying to tell. And that's a cool thing to see.
Very open. AKA you have to still guess a lot of it, but yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like he's not that open now that I'm thinking about it, because in the documentary he like with his words explains how he's trying to demystify it. Yet mm-hmm. He just like continually tells them, hey, don't film me. Don't look at this. This isn't interesting. What I'm doing isn't interesting, even though like it's the most interesting shit possible. Like he's like figuring out how to like live play out the scenes in a live way and like looking at the angles and like I want to see what Anno's doing. Like he's like faux storyboarding in real time with actors, like mocap actors. I'm like, this is crazy. Like, what is he doing? And he's just like, no, go away. This isn't interesting. I'm just doing something in my mind. Like, don't worry about it. And you're like, no, this is what I want to see. You crazy person.
It is really interesting. There's an omission he makes about just the modern process of making animation. And what Studio Kara does is they do a lot of pre-design work up to almost like a final edit stage in really rough 3D rigging, which was fascinating because like he spends so much of that documentary and so much of the process of making Evangelion like editing these really rough looking 3D renderings for the animation.
Well,
and then so they get it to like a near complete stage and then they animate the whole thing, which is nuts. But also probably apparently more cost effective because it's easier for them to adjust those rough riggings than it would be for them to reanimate a whole section.
I wonder if it's the cost. I don't know about the cost. It's probably a little bit time savings, but it's also like Ano says in this documentary, like he admits that he's not good at visualizing it well in his mind. So he doesn't want to do a storyboard. He wants to like see it from every angle and spin the camera around himself and like look at it.
Find the
interesting angle in each scene.
Yeah.
So like I think that's just his approach. He would rather just like have the action happen and then have it captured in complete 3D.
Yeah.
So you can go back and look at it in every angle and see where the interesting parts are.
Yeah, absolutely. He says something interesting in that fireside chat. He talks about how when you're just a director, you can kind of be a spoiled brat and do things how you want. But for the Eva rebuild movies, he became a producer. He's a producer and the director, which he was like, oh, I had to be an adult about how I approached everything. I couldn't just go with what my way was. Like I had to work with others. I had to think about the money, like all these different things where he's like, I had to be much more responsible in making these movies.
Yeah. The money part, that's for Gainax to figure out and like embezzle or whatever you need to do to get the money.
Yeah. What a tarnished reputation. I wonder how much of the more positive feeling around the rebuild movies can be associated with Ano no longer working at Gainax. Because just the further away he gets from that studio, the worse the husk of Gainax becomes. Like just
well, I don't know if
what we learn about them gets worse and worse.
Yeah, I don't know if that's 100% true. Like obviously, yeah, there was those scandals and that was dealt with. But the remaining people seem to be like trying their best to like restore the reputation, and they're working on that sequel to Wings of Oniamis, and they're like hard at work being like, hey, we're not irrelevant. They changed their name to Studio Gaia.
Oh, right. Well, that was like the Osaka branch, wasn't it?
No, the Sendai branch. Yeah, they were. Well, it was Gainax West. No, Gainax East. That was their name. And the Tokyo one kind of like folded, and then they like changed their corporate name to Gaina. And now they're Gaina, I guess. I don't know. They have a weird history, but like they really tried to like be like, hey, we're cleaning house and making it right. So we'll see what they come up with. I don't think they've produced anything yet, but they're working on stuff.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, definitely don't want them to be the tarnished reputation forever. But it's just interesting to me, like, you know, there's a lot I've heard and read a lot about just the work environment for Ano not being the best when he was actually making Evangelion.
Sure.
And so I just wonder, like, given time, distance, and like clearly because Kara is he's the president of that studio, you know, he can kind of dictate to a certain extent how they go about things. I just wonder if there was like less pressure or maybe like fewer people making demands on his process.
Well, yeah. I mean, come on. If you're working at Kara, you're not going to be like, oh no, you can't do that. Who's gonna say that? Nobody's gonna say that. It's up to Ano himself to limit what kind of weird stuff he does, just based on his own like conscientiousness about the others around him. Mm-hmm. That's it. That's the only limiting factor. No one's gonna tell him not to do it. Especially like in that documentary, he'll like begrudgingly try to collaborate and then ultimately reject everything that everyone tries to give him, and then like make the editors like do all this work all over again.
Yeah, I appreciated that he tells the documentary crew like, hey, go film everybody else and find out how I'm like my behavior impacts them. And to the credit of the people that he works with, they provide some honest observations about what it's like to work with Anno.
Yeah. I like the interviews with people outside of his circle, like the Miyazaki. He's just like he's fucking crazy, dude. He like studied nuclear blast footage for like 3 weeks and then drew all these explosions for me. It's like sounds.
He'd sleep under his desk with his feet sticking out. Yeah,
sounds like I like also where they're like, yeah, since he's vegetarian, he starts to smell like a weird animal because he doesn't like to shower, but he doesn't like stink. He just smells like a weird like organic mass like living in this place.
Oh man, I'm so happy that we got it in a timely fashion.
Yeah, me too. And now it's over.
I think I would be satisfied if there was never a new piece of Evangelion.
Yeah, that's fine.
I mean,
but
the one exception I would make, and we've had this conversation before, is if Hideo Kojima wanted to make the video game interpretation of Eva, I'd be down with that. That's the one thing I'd be like, okay, this is cool by me, because I think he's the only video game director that could do it.
Now, I agree with you that he's the only video game director that could do it, and I agree it would be cool, but I don't want it. If I saw that was announced, I would be like, damn it, no. I want original things. I want original works from Kojima and from Anno. I want new properties, new things that are interesting.
I agree. Although, I mean, the unfortunate thing with Anno is that it's going to be Shin Ultraman next, and then Shin Kamen Rider after that.
Yeah, but luckily, film, like Toho, isn't going to be like as flexible about how fucking long he can take to make these movies. So
yeah, he
can
he says that in the fireside chat. He says he's done with animation for a while. It takes him twice as long to make an anime as it does to make a movie, and you can make movies so much faster.
Yeah, because he just films it and it's done. You don't have to mocap it all out and then look at it and study it and decide which angles to use, and then animate it on top of that. Like after he does all the actual principal filming, he can just edit it and it's done. It's already there.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's good that we live in this world.
It's very good.
We have completed Eva, and we didn't die before it ended. So that's great.
Yeah. Which, certain fandoms are not going to be so lucky to get the conclusion of their big thing in their lifetime. So I feel very fortunate and grateful that Anno finally put an end to Evangelion.
Well, he had one chance. All he needed to do was never make the rebuilds, and we would have had it. Like it would have been done also. But
do you think that that's interesting? Do you think the rebuilds, were it not for them, do you think Eva would still have the brand force that it has in Japan? Or do you think that brand recognition pushed the creation of Rebuild?
Yeah, it's impossible for me to tell or know because I never visited Japan during the time before
Prior,
rebuilds were a thing, and I didn't visit Japan like right when rebuilds were like coming out, so I never saw the transition between no rebuilds announced and then the first one was released. Like, I don't know, so I don't know how it was impacted. I assume that yes, it obviously had to have made some kind of impact because there's merchandise available everywhere to this day,
right?
But I don't know, the original song is always used in stuff. So I don't know. Just don't know.
I'm happy we got it nonetheless.
Yeah, I agree.
because I probably didn't view End of Evangelion as like I didn't dislike it as a conclusion to the series. I thought it was a strong way to conclude the original series. I think the closure we're given with Thrice Upon a Time is more holistic, happier, and ultimately better than the first conclusion with the End of Evangelion. I don't want to make comparisons between them as films. I think they're very different films, and they both I wouldn't place one above the other, but I do like being in a world where Thrice Upon a Time is the ultimate end cap on Eva.
Okay, well, now that you've said that, I'm glad your psyche is good and you're a happy person, because I think whichever one you prefer is like a direct reflection of how your life is going.
Yeah, that's so funny. I had a coworker ask me if they should watch Evangelion, and this individual is a very hard worker, and often the stress of his job, stress of their job, I feel can impact them. And so I just was honest, and I said, I have never started a watch through of Evangelion when I was not dealing with some level of depression. And like, that's the truth. Like, I don't think I've ever, whether consciously or subconsciously, like said, hey, I'm going to watch Eva when I was like perfectly content in life. And I just think it's something that people gravitate to for the comfort of it. And maybe just the resonance in your mood. I think just a lot of people tend to watch Eva when they're maybe on the downswing of their emotions.
Yeah, I guess this is only true though for rewatches, because like the first time around you don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, definitely. But who knows? Maybe it just kickstarted something. And so like I just was like, if you're going to go into it, maybe make sure that you're in a good place, because I feel like if you're not in a good place, Eva can bring you lower. Especially because it didn't have the uplift to pull you out until the rebuild, until Thrice Upon a Time. Because I feel like Thrice Upon a Time is quite literally Mari extending her hand and saying like, hey, let's go. Like, let's get out of here.
Yeah, let's quit.
Yeah.
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 But everything's okay now. All is right with the world.
It is. Yep.
Ono completed his own...
Ano's in his director's chair.
I was going to say Ono completed his instrumentality of All of Us.
Yeah. We've been used.
Well, if you haven't yet watched Evangelion, I highly recommend you do.
How did you get here? You've made a mistake.
Yeah. If you're still listening to this and you still haven't watched any of Evangelion, like, there might be something wrong with you. Maybe you definitely should watch it. You're like a prime target for the show.
Yeah. Eva has never been more accessible. It is available on Netflix, the original series, and the first two movies. All of Rebuild is on Amazon Prime. That's globally, which is crazy.
I think Blu-ray edition's coming out soon.
GKids just released. They did pre-orders. They sold 5,000 pre-orders of a special edition Blu-ray release of the series, which does include the original ADV dub. That's sold out. They are going to do a standard edition release of the Blu-ray version of Evangelion, which is awesome. Like, seriously, it's an amazing renaissance of accessibility of arguably the most influential anime series of the 90s. continues to this day to have an impact on what creators are releasing. So yeah, definitely if you've reached this point in this episode, you've probably watched Evangelion. But if you're just a diehard fan of Anibros and you decided to stick it out despite our warnings, this is our recommendation to watch Eva.
Yeah, to those people,
There's no excuse at this point.
To those people, I would say congratulations.
Congratulations. I was gonna start this out by singing "Come Sweet Death." Might be a better way to go out.
Okay, yeah, I'll put that at the end. Do you want to end it there, or do you want to like say more words?
No, I've said my piece.
Okay, well, that's it. Goodbye.
Thanks for listening. You can find us on Twitter at Anibros Creative. You can find me, Kenny, at Sakoku_Otaku.
Yes, I'm on Twitter at Laven. I don't tweet very much, and
you retweeted a really funny Dragon Ball Z meme the other day.
Oh yeah, I do retweet things from time to time. Mostly not anime related though. But what are you gonna do?
Yeah. And you can find us online, www. 3 W's, period, anibroscreative.com. Or you can go directly to our podcast page, anibrospodcast.com.
Yeah. Leave us a comment.
Yeah. We have please comment. Let us know what you thought of Thrice Upon a Time. Let us know your thoughts on Evangelion. Let me know if you've ever watched Evangelion when you were happy, intentionally. Let us know favorite character, favorite detail that you caught in Thrice Upon a Time. Yeah, we'd love to hear. Like, honestly, Laven and I, we love Evangelion so much, and I will talk to anybody about it.
Oh yeah,
I'll talk.
If you like mention you like Evangelion beyond like a cursory like, yeah, I heard of it and saw one episode, then I'll talk to you about that for as long as you will stay standing in front of me.
Yeah, 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
And then the mailman's like, I gotta go, kid. Like, please let me go. Everybody, make sure to leave us a comment.